So why was the referendum dropped, and what will happen next in Europe? I asked Oliver Hartwich from the Centre of Independent Studies in Sydney. Well, Oliver, I read an interesting comment this week about the Greek referendum, or the proposed one, which was that the referendum was a good idea because it actually would confront the Greeks with the problem. It was their banana republic moment, and they had to face it and then go along with the result of it. But I guess the problem was that it was too risky.
Well, I think he had a point. Of course, it would have been a nice idea to involve the Greeks in the austerity plans, but that should have happened perhaps half a year ago, perhaps even earlier. You can't just go to a summit, negotiate with European leaders for 6 days, then travel back to Athens, and after 2 days of thinking say, well, I've had a brilliant idea, let's now go for a referendum. I think that doesn't work, and this is not the way to manage the European crisis, because this is just leading to more uncertainty. The general idea of a referendum, I think, is fine, but it came way too late.
So what do you think is the future of Greece now?
Well, effectively, they have been condemned to a protectorate of Brussels, and they are now under constant surveillance from their European partners. So the Germans are now watching quite closely what's happening in Athens, and effectively, they have lost their sovereignty. They are now really taking commands from Brussels, from Paris, from Berlin. And so that's going to be Greece's problem for the next decade at least, because even in 2020 they will still be bankrupt, they won't be able to access international capital markets, and that means that for the time being they are just a protectorate, and really the Greeks have no way out.
But is it really possible for Greece to leave the Eurozone and to devalue, as they've always done in the past, to regain competitiveness?
Well, that's what I argued all along. I think it's now at least possible, because now at least that final taboo is gone. The final taboo that no country can ever exit from the Eurozone. Because when Papandreou threatened the referendum, that was what Nicolas Sarkozy, the French president, said. He said, well, if that's the Greek condition, and if the Greeks are refusing the bailout plan, then they should really consider whether they can still remain part of the Eurozone. So I think that final taboo, that the Eurozone is forever, and that there's ever closer integration, I think that taboo is gone now.
Well, what you're saying is that the whole idea of the Eurozone in the first place was disastrous.
I think it was a disaster waiting to happen from the beginning, because even when the Eurozone was formed in 1999, the countries in it were quite different. You had these industrial heavyweights, you had France and Germany, and then you had periphery countries like Greece and Portugal that were even then lacking a competitive economy. So the idea that you can combine these extremely different economies under one interest rate, under one exchange rate, that was always asking for trouble, and that's the trouble that the Europeans just got.
Well, it's not just Greece now, is it? I mean, Italy's the next cab off the crisis rank. What's your view about Italy now?
I think actually before it spreads to Italy, we may be talking about Portugal again, because Portugal, I think, is the country that closest resembles Greece in terms of lacking productivity and lacking competitiveness. And then, of course, Italy remains a problem, but the Italians, at least, they are running a primary budget surplus. And the Italians have a high savings rate, and if you combine public and private debt, Italy doesn't actually look too bad. But I agree, what we have seen in Italy in terms of political governance from the Berlusconi government clearly wasn't encouraging, and if they don't get their house in order, and if they finally implement some tough reforms, they have to reform their labor market, they have to bring spending back under control. They need political stability and political leadership in Italy, and if they don't solve this fast, I think the spreads between Italian government debt and German bonds will reach new highs.
Well, Oliver, what's your best guess of the odds of the world now avoiding another financial crisis like the one in 2008?
Well, it could well be that the Europeans have once again bought more time for themselves. I mean, it's now almost cliché to say that the Europeans are always kicking the can down the road, but that's what they're doing. And with the new leveraging of the European Financial Stability Facility, that giant rescue fund, they may have indeed bought themselves some time, but they haven't solved the problem. So yes, the world economy, we may all avoid imminent catastrophe, but I think we have just created more problems further down the track.
Thanks for joining us, Oliver.
Thank you, Alan.